Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. This week, Navot Shoresh joins us from Troy, Michigan, where he is founder and CVO of the custom integration firm Spire Integrated Systems. Navot and I have crossed paths at the HTSA buying group meetings, but I never had a chance to sit down and get to know him or his company that well. When I saw his post about the opening of a beautiful new showroom up the road from me in Bay Harbor, Michigan, I thought now would be a great time to finally connect, learn about his career path from being an immigrant from Israel to successful entrepreneur in Michigan, and also about his favorite tech and product lines and his advice for running a profitable custom integration business with happy employees. Navot Shoresh, thanks for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I made a big leap there with happy employees. I hope that's not too much of an assumption.
It's a big focus.
That's good. I thought so from some things that I've seen from you in the past. So we'll get into that. But first things first, I kind of stumbled there on your CVO title. It's not a CTO, not a CEO, and I had to actually look it up because it didn't pop into my brain what the V was for. But I see that it's Chief Visionary Officer. So I assume this is something from you as a management-focused person, having some favorite management books and that sort of thing, that maybe you saw this as a good sort of pivot in the way you lead. Can you explain why you chose that title for yourself?
Sure. If you hear any moaning, and that's my dog sleeping, and so she a lot of noise when she's sleeping.
Okay.
Apologize in advance. So one of the things that we operate at Spire under the EOS platform,
Yes.
and an EOS platform, they don't call it CEO and COO. It's more of a visionary and an integrator. And the reason I made the change to the CVO is because that is new. That is what I do now. I don't handle day-to-day operation. I'm sit on a weekly meeting where we resolve any type of management and operational issues, but that's not my role. That's actually falls on my partner Jason. So that's where the visionary side part of it. It's also coming from listening to a lot of Simon Sinek and some of his idea of visionaries, where really the CEO of a company is the operational guy, and really the real role of a CEO is to handle the bigger things, the vision, where the company is going, what the culture is like, and quite honestly, what customers and services are we, taking on, and what we want to offer.
That makes sense, and I hear Simon Sinek quoted so much in our industry as a leader, and he really as a management guru. His main thing is the why, correct? Is that the big thing that comes out?
Yeah, that's how he's known. I actually like one of my favorite books that he actually was The Infinite Game. Is think infinitely rather than finite. I think I actually find that book a lot more connected to me than Start With Why. Many people have challenged to start with why. I actually prefer what. Jason, who is my integrator, prefers how. And I think that's how you have to always find the things that connect to you. Just because it's something that's famous, or somebody's famous, or somebody has a lot of followers, in my mind, it needs to be connected to you, and that's how you implement things better.
Well, you found I heard an interview with Ron Callis a year ago, and of course, it was a totally different time in a lot of ways. You were still really early on. I mean, this was like March of 2020 when I heard from when the interview was recorded. So we were really just at the beginning stages of COVID-19 and not sure what it meant. And you had to shut down operations, and you're trying to train up employees in the off time and still pay them their income. So you made it through that, and obviously we saw our industry just boom as far as demand, because everyone was spending on their homes. What can you say about the community that you're in there in terms of what you've seen in terms of that uptick? Are you in a vacation home area, or is it main primary residences there? And what have you kind of seen in terms of interest from clients and what they want to do with their homes from a technology standpoint?
So that's a really so we have two. We have currently three offices.
Okay.
We have an office in Troy that covers the Metro Detroit area, which is a typical metro area, right, with permanent homes, high level neighborhoods, and so forth. Um, and then we have our Traverse City office and our Bay Harbor showroom, which is two very much a vacation communities. And the reason we've seen tremendous amount of growth in actually in all areas is partly is because Detroit is starting to become an up and coming city. It's
Hmm.
actually evolving to be outside of just an automotive, into a commercial, into much more banking and other elements. And from perspective of like the North Market, where it's a lot of vacation homes, um, a lot of people start moving there permanently, or at least half the year. So it's turned into a much bigger place to live versus where it was before.
You're right up there with Leon speakers. Are you a dealer for that product line by chance,
Yeah,
or you up?
yeah. Leon is about southwest of us in Ann Arbor, but it's another area we cover in our part of our Troy office. And then we've obviously I've known Noah for many, many years and used his product for many, many years.
He's a really great guy in our industry. I,
Yeah,
I, I was privileged to get up there and see his operation in person. Finally, we took a family
yeah,
trip up, and he gave my daughters, who were still pretty young at the time, this was a few years ago, gave them the tour.
yeah.
I just sort of hung back and ran video on it, and it was a really impressive thing because he's just such a thoughtful person, and he just sort of took it upon himself that I'm going to lead these kids around instead of this guy from the industry that probably already knows most of this stuff. But that's really cool to be up in that area. I love Michigan. I'm in Indiana. We love to vacation up there. It's a great, beautiful state. So many places to
Yeah.
go. So
It's I'm glad it finally started to get it's getting a lot of attention in the media, especially the Traverse City area with all the wine industry
mm,
that's evolving over there. So we're seeing a lot of people from California moving in. A lot of like people are starting to invest in that area,
interesting.
and it's booming not just from a perspective of just our industry, but it's booming from many, many other various industry that are coming up there.
Well, that's great. Well, and your path to get there is so unique. I learned about it a little bit from your interview a year ago, but having grown up in Israel on a kibbutz, which is like a thing that to me is just like another, literally another world. But my daughters, we've raised them Jewish, and we would get these little books from the temple, basically kids books, and their holiday stories and things. And there was always one or two about someone on a kibbutz and raising their animals or whatever it was, you know.
I grew up on a farm. Yeah, I find it. I grew up on a farm in Israel in a kibbutz, essentially, but got very lucky with my dad, just who started as a farmer and then one day decided it's not for him and moved to a different direction
Okay.
and ended up being a CEO of a factory in the kibbutz. And I learned a lot from him over the
Okay.
years.
So
Uh,
yeah, take us through that. What I mean, so many folks I talk to, whether they're on the manufacturing side or the integration side, there's the common stories. I mean, there's so many common stories of interest in tech as a kid, and
yeah,
going up through AV, or being into two channel, working in a stereo store or whatever. That's not your story at all.
not at all.
Yeah, so I mean, you were in the military as one has to do in Israel,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how is it that you what was your dad's factory, and then how does that lead to you coming to the U.S. eventually?
So my involvement in technology actually started pretty early. I mean, I actually, when I was 16 years old, I worked for in the kibbutz. There were a corporation that was a company that was working on irrigation, a lot of automated irrigation.
Okay,
So I had my first DOS style type computer, and we actually were using water pressure to open up valves and monitor pH levels. So I started getting involved in technology from there actually.
okay,
In the military, I served in a very specialized unit that dealt with a lot of guidance systems, a lot of very, very sophisticated optics and satellite communication. So that really opened my eyes to what's available from the technology side. I actually always wanted to become a civil engineer. I wanted to
Hmm.
build bridges and tunnels. That was my dream as a child. Um, my dad, ran a factory. I learned from my dad mostly not on technology, but I learned how to handle customers.
Oh, okay.
I used to go on business trips with him and meet clients, and I saw how he had that relationship, how he was building relationship, and that was a tremendous help for us.
Hmm.
So
So then you work for your dad and observe that that kind of relationship building and that sort of thing. I recall that you took some time off though before leaving Israel and were able to travel a bit around the world. And
yeah,
where did you get to go?
so I started in England. From there, I went to Thailand, went to Singapore, and then was one of my biggest dream was always to be in Australia. So I went to Australia and I spent about 4 months in Australia,
Wow.
traveling the continent. I had this little tiny little car and drove it until basically it fell apart. But I got to see some of the most amazing spots and people. And then after that, what brought me to the United States, I had a girlfriend in Israel that was from the United States.
Hmm.
And then we traveled the US afterwards together, went back to Israel, started school. And then obviously with the relationship, just came back to the United States and continued my schooling here in Michigan.
And what were you studying when you got to Michigan then?
Electrical engineering.
Right, right. Okay. So that's
Again, I
really interesting.
gave up on my mechanic about my civil engineering dream by then, and
Okay.
went with it.
But even if you don't become an electrician first, the electrical experience before going into a low voltage focused integration business, I mean, that must be useful to kind of understand that side of the fence.
Yeah,
So,
so I've learned, I studied electrical engineering, but with a focus on control systems.
hmm,
So we learned a lot about electrical, but a lot of it was also signal path and communication. I forgot to mention, after the military, I actually owned a company in Israel right after military that did the infrastructure for the cable company. So we built infrastructure on high risers. So that was my first experience in the residential world and building infrastructure for cable using fiber optics and things of that nature.
and so while you were studying in Michigan, when you got to the U.S., were you also working through school, or were you a full time
Yeah.
student?
No, I was a full time employee first and then part time student.
Okay.
Most of my classes were at night. I had a job. So I worked for a company that did a lot of point to point communication. They built infrastructure and then they got into satellite installation and networking and stuff like that. So it was kind of, rolled into what I was already knew how to do. But it kind of exposed me. And the reason I got into residential was really by accident. We were working at Joe Louis Arena, which is the old Red Wing, the hockey team's, stadium. And I started meeting some of the players, and they asked me to come fix their TVs at home because we were working on the TV system in the stadium, and that's how I got into residential. I had no plan of doing that. My plan was finish up my degree and go work for like AT&T or some communication company. And all of a sudden, I found myself in doing residential installation.
And what appealed to you about that, having not really ever planned to do that kind of work? How did that just grab you and make you decide, hey, this is something I want to do?
That's a great question. I gotta
Well,
think about this.
while you kind of ponder that in the back of your mind, what were you kind of doing with what level of work were you doing for these hockey players in their homes at that time?
So, so when I started, I was actually just repairing other companies' work.
Ah,
That was that's how I got into it. I was just going around fixing other people's systems, and I'm starting to look at it and I said, well, there's got to be a better way of doing this. It can't be that complicated. So what I really enjoyed about it was actually the direct relationship I had with the customer,
Hmm.
where I did not have that on a large scale project. You really don't meet the customer, you just do the work.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that, the one on one. I really enjoyed the relationship part of it. And I think that's what led me to continue being in in this industry.
And what era, just to give folks an idea of where we are in the history of custom integration, what around what years were you doing those first jobs, repairing jobs?
1998, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, 98, I've been here a couple of years by then, 90, yeah, 97, 98, 99. I started Spire in 2001. So I know it was a couple of years before that.
Okay. So you were dealing with some pretty early on systems then,
Oh
at
yeah,
that
we're
time.
talking old Panasonic phone system, IR systems, mostly receiver based, systems, volume controls, that kind of stuff. Um,
And then in 2001, you're forming your company there. Um,
mhm.
what's that first step look like for you back then? For those who may be young in the industry or even veterans who have a similar experience, what do you how are you establishing your company there at the beginning?
I had enough, I guess, in terms of today's world, followers
Okay.
who wanted to work with me, who said to me, like, why not just go on your own? We'll support you, we'll give you work, we'll refer you. And really, that's how I started. It was a credit card, a Jeep, and a couple clients, and just started building from there. It's just, again, I think that what I would always recommend to someone, when you start doing something, know why you're doing it. Like, that Simon Sinek, why you want to do it. I think that's really important in the early stages, is to really have in your mind what it is that you're trying to create. Um, Pick a name that represent that. I think that's one thing that really helped me over the years, is that, the name Spire was really, I didn't come up with that name. Actually, a friend of mine who's a writer, was doing commercials, was talking to me, and I explained to him what I was trying to accomplish. And he's like, oh, Spire. And I had no idea what that was. And that name always helped me, find exactly, remind me what this is about. Spire, for those who don't know, it's a freestanding architectural element. It's the top of an antenna. It's the top of a church. It's the top, but it's a symbol, it's a symbol of a structure that faces upwards, meaning it's always looking to get better. It's always looking to go up, not being stagnant. So, every so often when I forget or I have a bad day, I just remember that story of talking to that, writer, and that's how I came up with that name. So it does help.
It's a beautiful name and it's really symbolic as you described, and it's such a lucky, fortuitous move to go with that, where every management person I've heard at conferences has said, don't put your name in the title of your company. You'll never be able to sell it. You can't, like, not that that's true, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
harder. Or like, why is your company called something audio when you do all this other stuff? And
other stuff. Yeah.
you've got everything sort of figured out there. Even though most people may not know what integrated is, their average consumer. But
Yeah, it's interesting that you just mentioned that, because our new logo coming up, kind of our new iteration, actually removed the integrated systems out of it.
mhm.
Spire. It's it's well known, it's established. We don't need the add-ons.
Yeah, and so as you develop this company, what are some of those early product lines that really became the core of who you are? We always refer to companies as their control systems, I guess. Is that one of the early ones that you established as your central product line?
Yeah, I mean, we used AMX back in the
Oh,
day, and we were doing some amazing things with it. And, back then that was it. There was really no self-packaged systems that you can just pick up and start programming. You had to actually build a lot of things from scratch. You have to create your own software. And those struggles, I'd be honest, probably helped us tremendously of reshaping the company to what it is now, where we try to, I don't want to say avoid custom, because we do some really custom work, but we try to stop. the idea of every job is custom.
Hmm.
It's more of a car company. It's a high level car company. It's platforms.
Yeah.
You have to start thinking in platforms rather than thinking in, oh, I'm just doing this control system. It's platforms.
Hmm.
So that means that the customer comes in and he wants this platform, and then you customize that platform to fit their house, their needs, their special requirements, rather than, oh, let's build a whole new platform for this person.
Right.
Or on the other side, limit yourself to only one very limited set of tools. Like, let's say, for example, I'm a X control, company, and they make lighting and they make this, and I use everything from them because I dedicated my entire, company to it. There's great risk with that because your platform is very narrow.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of clients, especially more younger or sophisticated and understand technology, that do not want to be locked into that very narrow platform. They want to have a wider platform.
Yeah, and I heard in your interview with Ron Callis that your business has kind of evolved into complicated projects on a budget or high end, with not much in the middle. So I would imagine those complicated projects on a budget are kind of what you're talking about, maybe that younger demographic sometimes.
So
What are you? How are you building that system? What are you doing to make that appealing to someone who maybe says, "I'm not going to go with that high end control system" or whatever it is?
So we actually try to uncomplicate them, right? They start with a lot of requirements, a lot of requests, and they seem complicated. And then I would say we really don't look at the budget as an actual element because it is going to cost what it's going to cost. And that's what we try to explain to a lot of the clients, whether you going with our fully large systems, integrated homes that we do everything, all the platforms that we provide, or that you come to us and says, I just want to have a great audio system and I want a great lighting system, but I'm okay with it being separated,
Hmm.
right? So we look at it and not try to oversell on the integration side
Hmm.
because it's not as important to that client. But what's important to them is convenience. They like lighting, they like shades, they like, audio, and they might like some really great audio. And I think that's what we're missing a lot of points. When somebody says, I want something simple, that doesn't mean they don't want to have something great.
Hmm.
So we'll do, actually, the way we call it is simple and great, you know, complex and advanced,
Hmm.
right? And so if you come to me and says, I don't want a control system, I'm really comfortable with Sonos, I'm comfortable with multiple apps, that's fine too.
Hmm.
But we still at that platform do have high level of installation, high level of networking, high level of, performance. It's just that the control system is simpler.
That's really interesting. It's refreshing to hear you describe it like that. I took years to commit to allowing a control system to be installed in my home. I had reported and covered this industry forever, and had always been really fearful of the horror stories that I heard about getting locked into things and then having your integrator basically have to be at your house whenever you needed to change anything. And as the
Yeah,
systems evolved, it became easier to have some end user control over things, and that
yeah,
eased my mind. But I've also experienced what you're talking about, where I don't always see the benefit to including every single subsystem in the control system. Like, I don't necessarily need to go to that one place to deal with it. And my family doesn't either. Like, my control system app is only on my phone. My family, my kids, my wife and my kids don't even have it. That goes to show that all they really want to do is push one button to maybe turn off all the lights at some point, or all, onto a set day mode or something. And
yeah,
from the audio standpoint, it's a control panel or whatever. But I can see where you really just have to kind of walk through what the needs of the client really are, and what their interests are. And that's really a cool thing to hear how you're doing that.
yeah. I would add to it though that when one of the things that I always show clients, even when they're ones who don't want to say they don't want to have a control system, is I do show them, like, we use Savant a lot, and so I show them the Savant app and how it operates, and a lot of people actually look at it and says, wow, the simplicity of having everything in one spot is worthwhile. And quite honestly, that doesn't actually add a lot of cost anymore to the system. Then, if you structure it as high performance to begin with, then the control side really does not add a tremendous amount of cost of a percentage of the job. It's not like it used to be. Like in the AMX day, the control system was like 30% of the job.
Mm.
Now it's more like 10,
Okay.
right? So it's an easier upgrade path for someone, but you have to be careful of not like, oh, we're only going to do it this way.
Mm.
We're only going to do it that way. Because some of these clients that, wanted that simple, that they came with a simple and great, turn into, six-figure jobs, like big six-figure jobs. And they added some element of automation. It's just maybe more minute. I'll give you an example. I've a dear client of mine that I did his house in California, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, and we put AMX system in, and it's worked there forever. This thing never breaks. I mean, it's unbelievable. But it's but when we did his house up in northern Michigan, he said, my son is in, works at Google, and we really want to use Google stuff, and I don't want to have I don't want to have a control system. And I kind of designed the system a little bit more open source, like Sonos and things of that nature, and then put Savan in to control the theater room and the living room, which had really tremendously high performance system, and they needed a remote, they needed something to
Right.
tie it all together. There was also lighting and shades and all kind of other stuff. And I remember it took about 5 minutes of me showing them how to use the app to turn, and they looked at me like, how come this is not how come this is not in the rest of the house?
Ah,
It took about 5 minutes.
okay.
And his son, who works for Google and brought all this Google Home kits and stuff like that, saw the ability to integrate the two together and said, no, this is great. And actually then got the house in California converted to Savan as well. Again, our goal is to be, consultants, advisors. It's
Sure.
not our job to tell you this is what you have to have or this is the best and all the other stuff is bad. No, it really isn't, and every customer is unique. You have to treat it that way.
Very good. Well, Navot Shoresh and I will continue our conversation after the break.
Did you know that 34% of broadband households are concerned about the air quality inside of their homes? Parks Associates' new quantified consumer study, Fresh Air, Air Quality and Comfort in the Smart Home, addresses consumer concern regarding indoor air quality as well as interest in air quality products and services. Our research of 10,000 broadband households finds that about 20% of broadband households are likely to purchase a smart climate or indoor air quality device in the next 6 months. This new consumer analysis quantifies concerns, perception of product value, and purchase intentions. For more information on Fresh Air, Air Quality and Comfort in the Smart Home, contact sales at parksassociates.com.
Welcome back. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, and I'm talking with Navot Shoresh, founder and CVO of Spire Integrated Systems in Troy, Michigan. One of the reasons why I reached out to you after kind of crossing paths with you over the years is this new showroom in Bay Harbor, one of those resort communities you spoke of. Beautiful environment. It looks like a full-on home that just really open floor plan, bright environment. What were you looking to accomplish with that showroom design?
So this is a very unique thing for us. I mean, our showroom in Troy is obviously our building, and that's where our operations is and all that stuff. And the showroom in Bay Harbor is very unique because we are actually sharing a space with an interior design company, a lighting showroom, a kitchen showroom, and then us. So it gives us the ability to incorporate ourselves into like a beautiful environment that all of us are sharing clients, but I probably wouldn't have never built the kitchen that's going to be built there on my own to show, but now I can incorporate all the lighting techniques that we have into that. We can, they're building us a really beautiful media area. So all these different things now incorporate together. So you actually sharing a lot of the cost. The Bay Harbor showroom, works in in a very limited time community. I guess most people stay there for maybe 3 to 4 months in the summer. So it's not like we're there all the time, but our goal there is to have big events, combined of all these companies who are there. If you notice, it's also right on the marina.
Yeah.
So one of the most expensive marinas in Michigan. So our goal is when people are coming in, they're visiting, they're coming in to see what's new, to see what's there. Um, and really, we're actually looking at Bay Harbor, not just developing our business in the north. It's also a lot of people from the Detroit area or Ann Arbor area that visit there,
Hmm.
see it, or maybe have not worked with us, see us there, and then reconnecting us with us downstate. So it's a very interesting dynamics of what happens to us right now. We're getting the job from both sides. Some of the jobs we've done up north are now calling us to do the jobs down in the Detroit area, and obviously, our clients from the last 20 years have always asked us to go up there and do work. We just made it more established, um, make it easier for everybody.
Right. So you're an HTSA member, and that's where we've seen each other quite a bit.
Mhm.
And HTSA has just been a real thought leader in terms of new technology. And one of those categories is the lighting category. Not just we've been doing lighting control forever in our industry, but the lighting fixture business, training up a lot of the membership, certifying the membership for lighting design, and just
Mhm.
selling lighting fixtures. So, how much of that is playing into the new showroom?
So it plays. I'll start by saying that what HTSA and Tom Doherty have done with lighting has changed our business.
Hmm.
I owe so much of what we've accomplished in the last couple of years with lighting and in general to what HTSA has done. The tremendous amount of education resources, the tremendous amount of just the ability to negotiate with lighting manufacturers that otherwise we would never have the opportunity to work with. So that opened up a tremendous amount of avenue for us to grow. And actually, that's what leads us to a lot of jobs. There's one builder in northern Michigan that met us in a lighting seminar that we've done,
Hmm.
and then called us because of the lighting design capabilities and because of what we do with lighting to take over all their construction because they wanted to elevate and they felt that they were left behind by the current providers they used to until then.
Hmm.
So I would highly recommend for anyone who's either dabbling or thinking about it, think about where the business is coming from. I know traditionally we've been in AV and control, but when you can communicate to an architect and designer and builders how a lighting system or a better lighting can affect their overall results, first of all, you're going to get their time, you're going to get their attention, and you're going to get their business. And that's one area that I contribute to our rapid growth in the last couple of years is our ability to design, supply, and understand lighting.
And are you going through some of that training that HTSA has helped to establish? Are you a lighting? Do you consider yourself a lighting designer? Or did you have someone on your team become a lighting designer?
So we have. I've been working on learning about lighting design for over 2 years, 2.5 years
Okay.
now. I've had the luck of working with Peter Romanello for many, many years, and we've actually had a training session with him at the Guild, and then HTSA did the similar like a 10 session series, which in my mind was the best lighting training you can possibly have. And then we actually recently hired an architect to lead our lighting design and lighting category department.
Interesting. Okay. You mentioned the guild just before we move on to anything else. For those who don't know what the guild is, can you explain that?
So the Guild is a small group of integrators that came together to basically support one another. It's not a buying group. There's no elements of business in it at all. It's more like an accountability buddy or
Hmm.
like somebody you can share information from on a such deep level that you have to have such level of trust. It just cannot be done on a large scale.
Right.
So there's only 12 people in the group.
Okay.
And it will probably grow to maybe 15 at the most.
Right.
But what we've accomplished together from brand identity and learning from one another is just incredible. So in my mind, the Guild is the what in my life, and HTSA is the how.
Okay.
HTSA is like the engine that drives the business side of my company, and this was driving my vision and my this is what we should be doing.
Right.
So
Yeah, I didn't want to miss that in case anyone didn't know what that was. But back to
yeah.
the lighting real quick. So you're seeing that opportunity and in that area. Of other categories that you hear about in our industry that are kind of burgeoning categories. You mentioned being a Savant dealer, and I know energy management is such a big thing with Savant right now. Are you
Hmm.
dealing with any of that? I know Michigan is probably not your typical state for that, like California would be, where you're dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
solar. So, do you see an opportunity there at all?
I think it's going to come. I don't. I think it's somewhat in its infancy,
Yeah,
and when we have conversation with clients about energy management and the need for it, or the interest level is still very low.
yeah,
Um, so I think that's has not turned into anything substantial in my mind.
yeah. It's very
Uh,
market driven, market by market, or
yeah,
part of the country, world.
yeah.
Well, on the lighting, are you doing much in the human centric part of it, so the biophilia part of it, or is it mostly just controlling from a design standpoint and making sure the color temperature is just consistent and that sort of thing?
So that's a perfect question. So actually, I'm in a room that has Ketra.
Oh, okay.
Big believer in Ketra. We've had our one of the first showroom in the country of Ketra before Lutron bought them. Um, to me, I found Ketra because of I was looking for something to help me with seasonal disorder.
Mm,
Most of us live in Michigan and came from somewhere that had a lot of sun. The effect. Um, and I, stumbled again, actually through HTSA, stumbled into Ketra, went to see them, just fell in love with the product right off the bat. And I said, I don't really know how we're going to use it, but we're going to use it some way. We need to have this product. I just knew that there is something so unique about it. And that was our launch into lighting. And then from there, it actually evolves down to more standard lighting and warm dim and all that other stuff that comes with and the design. But it started with human centric lighting, and I feel we know so much more about it. I live with it. I've had Ketra in my house for the last year and a half, so I've been living with it. I've tuning it, learning how to use it, learn when it works, learn when it doesn't. But yeah, I find that very, very compelling. And my customers find that, obviously when you're passionate about something, your customers will find it compelling as well.
and that's obviously something you really have to show to understand from a client standpoint. So, are you able to do that with the clients, or are you to the point where you can really explain it and they are on board with the idea without even having to experience it?
So we have our showroom in Troy does have Ketra
Okay.
and has a room dedicated with Ketra that we could darken completely and we can explain the process. And, although it's a very short experience, I mean, obviously living with it is a completely different experience than just seeing it for an hour or two, in demos.
Yeah.
But I think what resonate and it's a hit or miss because it's a very expensive, system to go with, right? It's a big investment. Let's call it what it is. So you really have to be passionate about what it does. You have to be passionate about the quality of light that it produces. Um, and if you're not, we could still produce good quality light, but just not going to have the range, right? I always look at it as vertical, from a perspective of vectors. Like when you look at your faucets, right? You get temperature and you get flow, right? Most lighting you only get flow.
Hmm.
Ketra is very much the same. It just gives you a complete control of temperature and complete control of flow. It's two vectors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at clients, they're used to two vectors. They're used to it from music. I pick my music and I pick my volume. I pick my temperature and I pick the flow, of water and so forth. And so I think if you tell the story in relationship to other things that they're expecting, there's a much better connection. If you just say, "Oh, look at this cool light that can turn green, it can turn red, and it mimics circadian rhythm," which most people don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, it really does not affect you. Learning from living with it, it really does not affect you as much as it's being published.
Mm.
In order for you to be really, like, especially for us in the north, to be affected by light, it needs to be directly in our eye level. it needs to be fairly intense, and it needs to be a certain amount of time. And you're not going to get it from a fixture up above, right? It does not connect with your eye, the same way as what circadian rhythm does with the sun.
Okay.
So I'm very careful about talking about circadian rhythm. There's a sense of, I will tell you, there's a sense of comfort having a really warm light at night. There's a sense of, energy when you have a great light in the morning, but I can't tell you it's affecting my sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Really far that, it's far reaching. Let's
Yeah.
put it this way.
Yeah. That's a good point. And it's hard to kind of explain all those different kind of variables that what you're talking about, because I thought of circadian in my mind as just following the pattern of the sun and having it be line up to what you want your room, the warm candlelight of night, not being a blue light of the daytime or whatever.
Yeah.
And not really even thinking about that circadian is really about sleep patterns and understanding that. But but from a understanding standpoint, you do see it as the benefit of it just matching up to what you traditionally would want the home lighting to look like, as opposed to this artificial lighting that when we first switched to LEDs, that's all we got was very artificial.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just like that. It's very interesting. Again, my wife is a surgeon, and so she walks into the bathroom at nighttime and hit the bright.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk into that room, and to me, it's shocking. So I go to the relax. But it allows both of us to have what we want in the same exact house, which has never been done before in lighting, right?
Yeah.
You have, a partner that likes it bright and someone that likes it more dim. And it's just like music. Now, I like this type of music. She likes this type of music. So it gives us options. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be sold, or that's the way it's supposed to be presented to the customer. It's that next level of options. It's the next level of customization. So your house feels perfect for you when you wanted it that way.
That's really funny. Literally a surgeon. Because I make the joke with my wife when, there's the comment that there's a male female eye difference, apparently, the way light is kind of interpreted or something. But my wife will sometimes just go with we've got a lighting control system. It's not Ketra, but you can go full bright, like you said. And we'll be in the kitchen and she just has it full bright. And I said, "Are you performing surgery in here?" That's my joke with her, because I love a dimmer and warmer dim kind of environment. Before we wrap up, I wanted to kind of to head on just one more thing. So we could go so much longer on this, but I don't want to hold you. You talked a bit with Ron about your service approach, and this is such a key conversation topic with everyone. And combined with that, the challenges these days, we're back in full business, but yet we've got supply chain challenges like every industry. So when you're dealing with service and supply chain, what is your approach these days? How are you selling service as a plan with clients as you wrap up a job or when you start a job? Are you using any outside help on that? And how are you sort of setting expectations for supply chain shortages?
Okay, so I'll start with the service because it is a huge. So Spire's, like everybody's talking about vision and all these big stories. To us, there's two things that we work on. It's quality work and exceptional customer experience. Those are the two things that every morning we when we get up, that's all we concentrate on, right? That's our OKR. That's our objective. And then we key result that based on those two elements. So to us, service is the one, 50% of everything that we do is about service, right? Supporting our clients. We call it support, actually. We stopped calling it service.
Okay.
Supporting our clients, making them long-term clients, and making big fans, because we don't have a sales force. We're almost reaching, 8 figures as a company, and we have no sales force.
Wow.
And the reason we're doing it is because we're able to do so much more work with our existing customers and referrals, right? So when I look at support and all that, we use Parasol to help us with our 24/7. every single one of our job comes with a year built in of 24/7 support, monitoring, you know, and then you have expedited service. Our support team we have 3 technicians and 1 coordinator. That's how important it is to us. Um, we actually establish our support coordinators. Basically, her whole role is to make sure customers are happy. That's it. That's every day. That's an entire objective. Make sure that our customers are raving fans, that they're taken care of. Um, and she will hunt us down. Like, where's that part? When are you going to, she is the customer representative basically inside Spire. I always said that's the best person to call in. So as I said, we use Parasol. And then what we've seen, we've got almost 150 clients already. We don't have a lot of clients as a company. We're not doing a lot of jobs every year. Fairly limited amount of work of jobs. We have over 150 clients already on that program, and the renewal rate is incredible. I think we're like 92% renewal rate.
That's great.
So clients find it very, very beneficial and continue to renewing it. But it is built into every single job, even a basic job or a large job. They all have it.
Okay.
Regarding supply chain, how to communicate to customers, just be honest. Just say, here's the increase in cost. So we have a lot of very long-term projects, very sizable project that prices have incremented upwards tremendously lately. So what we found is on some, we just have, we go to have that communication and says we could either order it early and sit on it, take the risk, and you can save it, or we can delay it and buy the latest and greatest, but it's going to come at a cost. And rather than trying to mark up the additional cost, we just transfer that cost to the customer. We've already made our money. Although in the last couple of months, we've had to start incrementing it even more because of labor cost increases, even getting the product, the fact that you can get it, it's just the cost of collecting like product from different vendors, holding on to much larger inventory that we have in the past. It's just the cost of doing business have increased dramatically. So we had to start making some adjustments on the cost.
Yeah, I didn't even think to ask you about the labor rate situation because of just inflation and everything that's going on right now. So that's a new challenge as well.
Yeah, it was an expensive. We have usually our reviews and stuff. It was a pretty expensive last month as far as cost, increases. But the way we're doing it here in Aspire is like we have every job has a salary range, and every employee knows exactly in order to get to the next level, they know exactly what they have to do and what the increase would be. But this year we've changed. What we normally do is we have an increase of cost of living, and it's based on your rating. We have a rating system that you get on your review, and it usually is 1%, 2%, and 3%. And this year is actually went to 3%, 4%, and 5%. Because of cost of living, we had to make some serious adjustments. But we're lucky because we have a tremendously amazing workforce that is, responsive and responsible and committed. So it doesn't feel like, I'm overpaying. It feels like I'm actually giving these guys what they deserve, and girls.
Good.
We have a lot of women in our company.
Nice.
And so it didn't like feel like, oh my God, I have to spend all this money on these people. No, they actually, every single one of them deserve it.
Great.
They truly deserve it. So it wasn't like a painful experience.
Yeah, and if all else fails, I see you get some maybe free labor from your interns that you recently hired. Your children.
Yeah, my boys. Yeah. Relatively smart workforce for very cheap.
And do you hope, as a wrap up, do you hope that you'll have another generation of integrators in the family? Do they seem like they might enjoy this type of work as well?
I think my 2 boys are, they'll do something different.
They're inspiring to something.
Aspiring to something different. Let's put it
different. Nice.
My wife is trying to get them to be doctors, and I think they're inspired to be something different than that too. So
yeah.
They just like me. They want to take their own path.
Sure.
They want to take their own and then go with it. If they ever come back and say, I want to come work in the company, I'll be very happy with that.
Very good. Very good. That's a great place to stop. I appreciate it. Navot, this has been a great conversation. And I told you we weren't going to go an hour, and we almost did because I just enjoyed it so much. Thanks for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Navot Shoresh is founder and CVO of Spire Integrated Systems in Troy, Michigan. You can learn more about his company at spireintegrated.com. That wraps up today's show. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to this weekly podcast on your favorite platform and consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the bi-monthly print or digital magazine and to our Friday and Tuesday newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist to residential tech. Home automation, smart device, home or smart house.